You ever stop and think, where does the future actually come from? For a huge part of the 20th century, the answer was pretty simple. It came from these legendary corporate research labs. But then, they just kind of vanished. So let's get into the story of how America's great innovation engine got switched off and what we ended up building to replace it. I mean, think about places like Bell Labs or Xerox PARC or the big IBM labs. These were not your typical R&D departments just trying to push out the next product. No, these were like cathedrals of science, funded by massive corporate profits, where the most brilliant minds were basically given a blank check and the freedom to explore the absolute edges of what was possible. And the results? Well, they literally built the world you and I are living in right now. We're not just talking about cool gadgets. The transistor from Bell Labs, that's the bedrock of, well, every piece of modern electronics. The graphical user interface from Xerox PARC, the windows, the icons, the mouse you're probably using this very second, that was all born there. These labs laid the actual foundation for entire industries. This quote, man, it just kind of hits you, right? It really captures that sense of loss. These places were special. They were this unique ecosystem for discovery that had the massive resources of a corporation, but the intellectual freedom of a university. And now, for the most part, they're gone. And that is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? If this model was so incredibly successful, pumping out world-changing tech and creating unbelievable long-term value, why on earth would any sane company decide to dismantle it? Well, the answer has almost nothing to do with science and everything to do with finance. Right around this time, the entire philosophy of what a corporation is even for started to change, radically. The goalpost moved. It wasn't about building the future anymore. It was about boosting the stock price by next quarter. So starting in the late 70s and really taking off in the 80s, this theory of shareholder value takes over America's boardrooms. The idea, pushed by economists like Milton Friedman, was simple. A company's one and only social responsibility is to maximize returns for its shareholders. Everything else, including risky long-term research, was a distraction. And this new philosophy got supercharged by a couple of key policy changes. First, in 1980, the Bayh-Dole Act let universities patent their own research, which created a whole new path for innovation outside of corporate labs. But the real game changer, that was SEC Rule 10b-18 in 1982. This new rule basically gave companies a legal green light to buy back massive amounts of their own stock, something that used to be seen as a form of market manipulation. So what is a share buyback? It's actually pretty simple. The company takes its extra cash and, instead of building a new factory or lab, it just buys its own stock on the open market. Fewer shares are out there, so each remaining share is worth a little bit more. It's a quick and easy way to make the stock price go up and boost a key metric that Wall Street obsesses over called earnings per share, or EPS. Now, you might be thinking, don't companies already give money back to shareholders with dividends? And yes, they do, but buybacks have a huge advantage, and it all comes down to taxes. A dividend is cash in your pocket, and you get a tax bill for it right away. But a buyback? It just makes the shares you already own more valuable. You don't pay a dime in taxes until you actually decide to sell. For investors, that's a massive, massive incentive. And this brings us right to the heart of it, what we call the great unwinding. As soon as companies had this simple, tax-friendly, legally safe way to get an instant stock price boost, the whole calculation of how to spend money changed forever. You see the problem, right? It created a direct conflict. Real, groundbreaking research is a huge, long-term gamble. It can take a decade, maybe more, to pay off, if it ever does. A stock buyback? That pays off instantly. And when the CEO's bonus is tied directly to the company's stock price, well, the personal incentive to pick the short-term win over the long-term bet is just overwhelming. It's a zero-sum game. Every dollar spent on a buyback is a dollar you can't spend on a new lab. And you can see the results of that trade-off right here. For so many of America's biggest companies, spending on financial engineering, like buybacks, now completely dwarfs the spending on actual, engineering and research. A company like Apple, for example, has spent hundreds of billions on buybacks, way more than its entire R&D budget over that same time. The priorities are crystal clear. Now, to be fair, it wasn't only about the buybacks. There was other stuff going on too, things like offshoring, consolidating management, rising costs. All of that put extra strain on these really expensive long-term research labs and just sped up their decline. So, with the big corporate labs on the way out, where does all that deep fundamental science actually get done today? The innovation engine didn't totally break down, it moved. Today, the new backbone of American basic research is the university system, and it's powered by a lot of money, about $60 billion a year in federal funding from places like the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. So the primary source of funding for deep research basically shifted from private corporations to public taxpayers. This has created a totally new pipeline for innovation. Today, an idea starts with a government grant at a university. That leads to a breakthrough on campus. The university then patents it, and then they license that patent out to a startup or a big company to actually turn it into a product. It's a much more complicated, more fragmented journey than the old way of doing things. And look, while this new system definitely works, it is not a perfect replacement. By trading one engine for another, we've created a whole new set of challenges and bottlenecks for ourselves.
I mean, just look at the two models side by side. The differences are pretty telling. The old corporate labs were shooting for the moon, fundamental breakthroughs on a timeline of decades. The new university model is driven by the need to secure the next grant, which usually only lasts 2 to 5 years. The challenge isn't just about corporate vision anymore. It's about navigating the publish or perish culture and dealing with political influence over funding.
And these new incentives have real consequences. Researchers might shy away from those really ambitious, high-risk projects because they're just less likely to get funded. You have to write your grant proposals to appeal to what government agencies are prioritizing at that moment, which can absolutely be shaped by politics. Pure, curiosity-driven science can end up taking a back seat to just getting results within a short grant cycle. So when you boil it all down, this is the grand bargain we've made. We've replaced a system that was funded by corporate profits and designed for long-term curiosity-driven discovery with a system funded by us, the taxpayers, that's designed around short-term grant cycles, publications, and the headaches of university patent licensing.
And that really leaves us with a final big question. The old innovation engine, it was built for marathons. It could sustain a chase for decades to find something truly revolutionary. This new engine, it seems like it's built for a series of sprints. And you just have to ask yourself, in making that trade, what kind of world-changing breakthroughs are we maybe leaving on the table?